All right, let's dive in. I'm going to be going over a lot today, so please feel free to take notes, put any questions in the chat. I'm excited to go over, like I said, a lot. So let's dive into it. Today we're talking about RFPs and going beyond the RFP to understand how commercial landscape companies doing over 10 million in annual revenue build predictable pipeline. That's the focus of today's conversation. A lot of you have, I'm willing to bet, have asked yourself this question around sometime around 2 a.m., wondering where is next quarter's pipeline actually coming from, right? We're not talking about the RFP you already know about, not the renewal you hope stays intact, not the referral that might come in, but the actual pipeline of intentional engaged prospects. The pattern we see around this $10 million mark or this stage is usually always the same. We see this often, right? You have a strong book of business, you have a team that delivers, and things look very successful from the outside, right? You have significant revenue, contracts coming in, brand recognition, you've built up trust and relationships over the years. You have a team that does great work and does their jobs properly, from crews to account managers to BDs, but behind the scenes, growth still feels too reactive, right? Systems are disconnected. Certain information either lives in separate spreadsheets or in one person's head or in tribal knowledge. And scaling now starts to become more difficult because teams are out of sync. So this is specifically for commercial landscape firms that have outgrown your referral-led growth, your referral dependency, right? Companies where pipeline still feels too reactive, leadership teams looking for more visibility, forecasting, and control. And I know we have a lot of business developers, sales teams, sales directors joining today or watching this. So we're also going to be talking about how this helps keep your pipeline warm and helps enhance the relationships that you build and building more leverage through systems rather than manual effort, which we all know is limited, right? So over the next 35 minutes, we're not going to just be talking about more marketing. That's not what this is about. We're going to be talking about a comprehensive system and approach for predictable commercial pipeline that involves everything from marketing to sales to operations and integrates it all together. My name is Austin Koziel. I'm the Strategic Growth Advisor over here at Halstead Media. I work closely with companies doing at least 5 million in annual revenue, day in and day out, specifically commercial landscape companies. Started actually in the execution trenches as a project manager. Now I get to design the systems behind growth and pipeline, and I do get the benefit of getting very industry specific insights into exactly what breaks at each stage of growth. And I'm here to share some of those with you today. So who we are at Halstead, we are a growth marketing and sales enablement platform for companies doing anywhere from about 8 million to 50 million plus. Today, we're going to be talking about H Commercial, which is built for B2B sales cycles, full funnel performance visibility and operational integration between HubSpot and Aspire. You can see some of the partners we work with today, again, ranging from anywhere from around 8 million to sometimes into the 80 million, right? So we can understand what's working at each specific stage and how you can best get to the next. So let's take a step back, get some context, and understand what got you here and why this hits around your size specifically. Like we said earlier, what got you here is mostly relationship-led growth, reputation, hustle, hard work, and effort, right? And those are all necessary. They were all necessary to get you to this point. But now the problem is those same things that got you here, if you rely on them, they're only going to create friction as you scale. So you have a good local reputation, but unfortunately the owner has to be overly involved in everything for things to run properly. There's trust in the brand name, but that only goes so far with the people you know if you're depending on referrals and word of mouth, right? Your business isn't small anymore, but the growth system hasn't changed since you started. And the truth is, what got you to the stage is not going to get you to that next stage. A lot of you are around $10 million in annual revenue. It's not going to get you to that 20, 25, 30 million plus mark if that's your goal, right? It's not an effort problem. It's not that you forgot how to sell. It's It's not that this is too relationship driven for modern marketing and growth. The systems aren't broken, they're just outgrown, right? So this is a good point to just take a minute to ask yourself, with your current setup, can sales see, do sales have the visibility to see when a target account engages with your content? If you're a multi location operation, can you tell which branch produced last quarter's qualified pipeline? If you're running ads, do you know what your best performing channel is and how much revenue came from each source? And how about this? If I called three of your salespeople separately and asked what makes your company different, would I hear the same answer? All things to consider as you're setting up the systems for growth and scale, right? This is about data-based decisions, control, and visibility, not just doing more. So now we get into the next level, which is systems-led growth, building systems and building leverage to compound your hard work, your manual effort, and not entirely relying and depending on it, right? So now we're getting into buyer segmentation, commercial buyer types separated, not blended, being very specific and intentional with who we're talking to. We're getting into cleaner forecasting, so pipeline that leadership can actually trust, enhancement capture, so stronger account expansion inside existing accounts, not just relying on new logo acquisition, right? Disciplined follow-up, routine follow-up, automated tasks and procedures for follow-up rather than relying on notes and memory. Clear attribution from first touch to close revenue, and then getting into HubSpot and Aspire integrated properly, connected with the right roles for each, a CRM and an ops tool that work together. Now let's get into it. I want to be very clear because I've heard this before. Some of you might have heard this as well. But bidding more is not a growth strategy. RFPs are not where growth starts. RFPs are where late stage competition happens. So let's define an important term, right? Because I brought this up several times now. Pipeline is a map that helps you and your team track, organize, and move deals forward with purpose. It's understanding the key stages a prospect and existing client both move through, from the first sign of interest to the signed contract to upsells and total lifetime value. Not just from winning that initial contract, but again, how do we expand accounts? How do we increase lifetime value? And how do we ensure contract renewals? So this is developing pipeline from that first sign of interest all the way through in a visible, predictable, scalable approach. Now it's important to zoom out and understand all of the stages that happen before an RFP actually comes across your desk, right? This is what commercial decision makers actually do before they contact you. These 4 invisible stages before the RFP ever arrives. Starting with discovery. Let me back up and say that we need to be visible starting at point 1, not at point 4 or 5, right? So it starts with discovery. A decision maker might visit your website, might do a basic Google search or check out LinkedIn, and then start to become more familiar with their options, which companies can actually service their need, right? So they might follow your page, read some content, return to your site, and now they're narrowing down their options, doing more specific and tailored research to see who can help them reach their goals. So now they might download a guide or signal some sort of intent to learn more and engage with you. And now here's where you capture that intent. It goes inside your CRM. And now nurture opens up, pricing page views, increased deal score, and now your BDs, some of you specifically, have an idea of who's actually interested, engaged, and where to spend your time, and then the RFP and outreach happen, right? So modern commercial buyers travel this road for months and months before they ever contact sales. No one's just calling up everyone they think that can help them and getting their sales pitch because they don't have time for it, right? They need to do their research before they actually reach out to a company, reach out to you. So let's talk about what this could look like. So someone is just starting off that discovery phase, phase one, right? They might type in something like top commercial landscaping company in San Diego, and they see a few different things pop up. You'll notice that these are sponsored placements. So sponsored landscapers in San Diego, and then you have another sponsored placement down below. Or they might type in reliable commercial snow removal company near me, a little bit more specific, right? And now an AI overview pops up. This is important to note that these AI overviews, this information is not being pulled out of thin air. This information is being pulled from content that lives on websites on the internet that has been specifically created to show up for these searches. Because when someone views this, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to click on some of these links and do more research and visits the sites that are positioned to show up for these overviews. So the first step is making sure you're visible in this valuable digital real estate. Then they move along the journey. They might check out LinkedIn. They might see one of your posts and say, okay, that's interesting. That resonates with something that's been in the back of my mind. Let me go check that out. And now they visit your website. And when they're on your website, they might see something like a free assessment to find out if it's time to switch to a better provider. Maybe they weren't fully convinced that things were bad enough to switch, but now they're like, all right, let me just check this out. So they give you their contact information in exchange for something of value. Now, this populates in your CRM. You get the data, you get the visibility to understand who's interested, who's raising their hand to start a conversation, right? You see things like phone numbers, contact owners, primary company, last activity date, lead status to see if you connected with them or someone on the team connected with them, or if there's been attempts or what's turned into an open deal from that outreach. You can see when it's created. And now you can see what's happening in different deal stages to see that pipeline being forecasted throughout the different deal stages. So you can plan ahead, understand where to better spend and allocate your time and resources. So that's what it looks like in a potential visual example. It's not necessarily going to be that linear, but that's just a good example of what could happen. So by the time the RFP hits your inbox, so much has already gone on, right? Prospects have already experienced dissatisfaction and they know they have some sort of problem that they need help solving. They've already talked internally, researched alternatives, formed opinions, have a preferred provider in mind, and they already know who feels credible and who feels interchangeable and who's just going to be the price check on their short list when they do go send out those RFPs, right? And the problem with showing up late is that it creates commoditization. It creates a price race to the bottom so that now if you get outbid by $2, they're going with the competition. You're losing because you're not competing on value or trust. Your only shot is competing on price because they don't know you. You don't stick out in their minds. And this is already how mature B2B service industries operate. Commercial landscaping is late to the game, but the good news is that's your opportunity. This is already going on in commercial HVAC, managed IT, roofing, professional services. In those industries, this is normal. Modern B2B marketing is normal. Buyers, they understand buyers research long before they talk to sales and have these systems implemented. So to be clear, the RFP itself is not the strategy. The strategy is becoming the company they already know, trust, and understands before the RFP exists. So this pipeline that we're talking about has to be built long before that actual buying window if leadership wants control, forecasting, and visibility. Now, some of you might be thinking, we've tried this before. We've done some SEO. We've posted on LinkedIn. We ran Google Ads. The issue itself is not the tactic or the channel. It's that it was in isolation, not part of a greater system. So for example, SEO without proper positioning creates traffic without clarity. ads being run, money being spent on ads without proper tracking and attribution in place or proper landing pages to convert those visitors into engaged prospects becomes spend without confidence. If you have a CRM without sales adoption, it just becomes another place for data to die. So the point is tactics produce activity, but systems produce visibility, movement, and data-driven decisions. You also might have heard our industry is too relationship-driven for marketing to matter, but that's exactly why it matters more. It is so relationship-driven. That's why you need to stay in touch. You need to keep leads and prospects warm between renewal cycles or between face-to-face communication. You have to help the buyer understand the brand before sales gets involved. And you have to give your BDs something to reference after a buyer engages instead of a physical leave behind that you don't know if they threw in the trash or if they're going through. Now you have something to actually give you visibility into how engaged they are with your content and with your brand. You also might have heard we just need to hire more business development people, right? But more BDs without a system creates chaos, not growth. More noise, less clarity. Everyone's doing things their own way. They don't understand how marketing connects to sales, connects to operations, and it's too reliant on memory-based follow-up or disconnected spreadsheets in different places. So opportunities leak and money is being left on the table. So let's dive in deeper into this actual approach, H commercial, 3 connected layers, 1 growth flywheel. Please feel free to take notes. And again, we're going to have some time for questions at the end. You can put those in the chat and I'll go through them in order. So the 3 main components that you need for this to work successfully are strategizing with intention and clarifying where growth should come from and aligning the strategy, the messaging, the foundation of your digital approach with your actual priorities and growth goals. Seems obvious, but too many people actually skip that part. Next, it goes into building the brand and relationships based on that strategy and that messaging and that foundation to create trust before the buying window over multiple channels, multiple touch points over a long period of time to build those relationships and keep them warm at scale. And then it needs to drive pipeline and close deals by converting that trust into measurable revenue and building systems leverage rather than just relying on manual effort. And the key here is that each layer feeds the next. Strategy clarifies the right buyers. Then the brand and relationship building create familiarity and trust. And then pipeline systems convert that trust into measurable opportunities, follow up, and revenue movement, not just a gut feeling. So let's dive into this first layer, strategizing with intention, crafting the foundation to align with your business goals. I'll say it again. Too many people skip this and they just go straight to step 2, and it's built on a shaky foundation at best. So this is very important to clarify who you're trying to reach, what your prospect needs to understand and believe, and how should the business be structured digitally so that the right buyers move through the right paths. You'll likely have more than one, and so you'll need to properly segment. So diving in, starting with your ICP definition, your ideal customer persona, defining what your ideal prospects look like, which buyer types, property types, service lines, and markets matter most to you. Then you need to prioritize and strictly prioritize which revenue streams lead, which support, and which stay secondary, because this all matters in terms of how you're presenting it and how the messaging is leading and where your focus needs to be in terms of time, attention, resources, how things are conveyed and displayed on the site in a hierarchy of priority, not just everything thrown up there with equal priority and leaving people confused. You need to segment your buyer types. You need to wrap this all up in a clear, cohesive message, a clear, cohesive brand message to differentiate you from your competitors and resonate with your target audience. translating your value into clear language that commercial decision makers can understand fast. And it's very important to understand if you're trying to speak to everyone at the same time, you are resonating with no one. You have to hone in and get very detailed on who exactly you're talking to, how you serve them best, and how you serve them better than your competition. Then this maps onto your website and funnel strategy, and this also outlines the growth roadmap, not just for where you're at now, but where you need to be going in the next 1, 3, 5, and 10 years so that everything aligns and you can sequence what gets built first and what scales next. At this stage, growth actually requires subtraction and clarity and simplification before addition. So for example, what this might look like when it's laid out properly on a website is very clearly communicating and organizing who you serve, from office parks and corporate campuses to industrial parks, intentionally organizing them based on priority. For example, you might love working with HOAs, or you might say, let someone else have those. We have no interest. Our main focus is data centers because they're popping up around us like crazy, and we found this angle and market that we can serve best, right? And on those specific pages, again, you have to really get specific about, for example, why Class A properties partner with Riverview, and then demonstrate your credibility and trust building assets like great photos, great videos, storytelling content aligned with those service pages. And this layer prevents spreading a generic message through more channels, because if the strategy is unclear and you amplify that message through a multi-channel approach, all that does is distribute confusion faster. So again, I'll say it again, if your message is unclear and you skip this and you go to just distributing it and amplifying the message, you're only distributing confusion faster. So now we go into distributing that message, building the brand and relationships through a multi-channel approach, and creating trust before the buyer window opens. So this layer answers, how do you make the right commercial buyers familiar with your company before they need a proposal, renewal, enhancement, or a new provider? Now, I can imagine some of you are looking at this and seeing things like SEO and Google Ads. I want to be very clear. This is not just running ads and posting on Instagram. This is about building relationships, providing value, and positioning your company as the obvious choice at scale. It's doing what you do in person, but in a leveraged way to do it at scale across a long time period, across multiple channels that your prospects are using on a day-to-day basis. So now in layer 2, we get into the website platform, building a website that doesn't just look nice, but actually converts visitors into engaged prospects, becoming visible in those AI overviews and searches on Google when someone's just doing their preliminary discovery and familiarity phase, linking paid search to specific landing pages, so capturing that high intent demand that already exists on Google and turning it into visitors to your website, leveraging LinkedIn and targeted demand on social platforms, so reaching decision makers through leadership networks and associations and very detailed, hyper-focused sniper approach targeting. We'll get into some details in just a second because LinkedIn is terribly underutilized, and I don't think people understand how powerful it can be. Then it's also important to showcase your credibility assets, the proof that you actually do what you say you're going to do, and proof that you can deliver on your word and that you're providing that value that you're explaining. So showcasing that scale, professionalism, equipment, crews, operational depth, your culture at the company, right? Making sure that that is properly seen and visible. Then creating educational content and lead magnets. For example, maintenance plans, RFP checklists, no planning guides, and budgeting tools giving value to your prospects so they want to engage with you more and learn more about you and sticking out in their heads, and then also seeing how they're engaging with you in the back end in your CRM. And then lastly, retargeting and nurturing those audiences to stay present after that initial website visit or after someone initially views your content. And again, now you're showing up and staying visible across a long period of time, not just relying on them to visit your website once and remember you forever. So let's talk about LinkedIn in a little bit more depth because, like I said before, it is very powerful when it is used right. Your prospects are on LinkedIn. You can find them, you can speak to them directly. So for example, you can segment by industry, associations, company size, or revenue, or number of employees. So you can target specific job titles, property managers, senior property managers, vice president of operations, director of real estate development. You can filter by industry or company size. You can also see forecasts of how many people you're going to reach, how many times you're going to show up based on your audience size. This is all very valuable data to plan your growth strategy. You can even create lookalike audiences based on your current client list. So for those of you who don't know what a lookalike audience is, it's exporting your current clients and basically giving it to the algorithm and saying, these are the types of people we want to work with, we want to serve. Go find similar people with similar interests, characteristics, and behaviors and show us in front of them as well. Very powerful feature. And then, of course, you can separate by cold prospecting and warm nurturing because, again, you don't want to have the same message to two different people, someone who's never heard of you before and someone who is familiar with who you are and what you do. Just like you don't have the same kind of conversations with someone you just met compared to someone you've known for years. And imagine what this can do when it's paired with the right content message. So you're targeting your ideal ICPs, you're speaking to their pain points, you're providing real value to stand out from the competition. You're showcasing a lead magnet. Now you're building lists and leverage, getting a list to communicate regularly with people who are engaged and interested in your company, right? This is the new school way of selling and winning. It's not just all handshakes and lunch and learns and going out to lunch, right? It's consulting and educating and becoming the obvious choice to help more people. Think of the difference between what's it going to take to get you in this car today versus someone who's actually trying to help you achieve your specific goals, right? This is how we do it at scale. Just to be clear, LinkedIn is not the system itself. It's just the leverage point inside the system. And without proper strategy, CRM, nurture, and attribution, it just becomes another disconnected activity. So I just want to make that very clear. But it is a very high leverage point inside the entire system. And lastly, I just want to reiterate, this does not replace relationships and the necessity of the business developers. It just strengthens them, right? Because a property manager or your target ICP might not be ready to switch today. But when that frustration builds, a renewal approaches, or a need appears, the company, that they already recognize, has the advantage. This is all the necessary groundwork to close more deals, shorten sales cycles, and avoid a price race to the bottom. So let's take a quick second to pause and reflect on, we've gone through a lot so far, right? But are you starting to see it, how your brand value and positioning can be clearly communicated at scale? How specific messaging to the right audience over the entire buyer journey can build more leverage. How educating and nurturing get you on more bid lists and make you stand out from your competition. Now you're seeing intent signals from your prospects, and it's clear to the sales team. And demand is being created and pipeline is growing rather than just sitting back and waiting and crossing your fingers, hoping for those RFPs to show up and then try to win as much of them as you can. So now you see how sales performance improves when those RFPs do arrive. Now let's go through the last layer, layer 3, driving pipeline and closing more deals, which is where we convert trust into measurable revenue movement. This is where a lot of commercial firms leak revenue because a lead comes in, but the source is unclear, so that they don't know what's working, or a prospect engages, but sales doesn't even see it, or a renewal window approaches, but there's no nurture path, or it might be forgotten about because people are still writing notes on the back of business cards rather than getting setting up automations and task automations in their CRM to be automatically reminded months and weeks before contract renewals start to come up. This is the layer that connects marketing, CRM, sales follow-up, attribution, and account growth. So it all starts with the HubSpot CRM structure. This is the sales and marketing truth system. It's where you go to understand sales and marketing. That's where it lives. Your MQLs, your deal stages, your source data, and your nurturing automations. Then we bring in the Aspire integration roadmap. Ops continue to live in Aspire, and there are clear roles for each. We'll go into more depth in just a second, but it's also important to make sure you have the proper tracking and attribution set up to understand exactly what's producing qualified opportunities. Then we get into nurturing and automation, moving prospects, dormant leads, and MQLs through your pipeline without relying on memory or manual effort. This is where we get into existing account expansion. So again, not just winning more deals, but also increasing total lifetime value of your clients. Because of course, you don't want to have to pay more money to acquire more customers when you can also expand that lifetime value on the back end because you've already done all of the hard work of acquiring them. Then it gets into proposal and follow-up support to reduce leakage between inquiry, proposal, decision, and close, and leadership dashboards to see what's working, what's stuck, where's the bottleneck, and where to invest more time, effort, and attention based on what's working to maximize and scale that. So now leadership can finally start asking the right questions rather than, did marketing work? You can start asking real questions like, which branch is producing qualified pipeline? Where should we increase spend? What service line is producing the best opportunities? And which existing accounts deserve expansion focus? All laid out with deal stages, forecasted by those deal stages with probability percentages of closing, and understanding what's most likely going to happen in the next week, month, quarter, year. So you've heard me reference HubSpot and Aspire. It's not HubSpot or Aspire, it's HubSpot and Aspire. And how do they work together and what should each system own? HubSpot is the source of truth for sales and marketing. So deal stages, inquiries, MQLs, engagement, source data attribution, and reporting that rolls up to leadership, where Aspire owns the operations and delivery system, job management, production, account execution and crews, deliveries, scheduling, and closed loop revenue back to source. And this is the reason it's a flywheel and not a stack. A stack is just a list of tools that creates activity, where a system has a sequence that creates visibility, control, and data-driven decisions. Typical vendor just sells a piece of the wheel, but each commercial installs that operating layer that makes the wheel itself turn. So when we zoom out and look at what changes when all of this is installed, we go from instinct-based decisions to systems and data-led growth. So now you start asking, what's the data telling us? And what decisions should we make next, instead of where do we think the work is coming from, just based on instinct and stories and recent wins and hope. Now we look at the data, the source quality, and the deal movement. RFPs become less reactive because you know what's likely coming. Renewals and enhancements get easier. Things are structured, not based on memory. Existing clients hear from you in between buying windows. Enhancements don't depend on an account manager remembering everything, right? Now business development gets easier to manage. Leadership makes better decisions. I know there are a lot of BDs or sales directors on this call. As you start selling more, closing more, sales cycles shorten, and you become more confident when this is set up properly. And for those of you in leadership, it's not just about more leads, it's about better decisions, where to invest, which markets to push, which branches need attention, etc. And predictable pipeline doesn't mean every month is perfect. It means leadership stops steering company from incomplete information. So now, if this resonates, if this is something you're interested, of course, we can see if it makes sense to potentially help out. The next step would be to schedule a growth gap review to understand where your pipeline is being created today, what your CRM is actually showing, and whether H Commercial is built for where you're going. Of course, you'll leave with value either way, regardless of whether or not we work together. But this is not for companies that simply want someone to run ads while everything else stays the same. It's not for companies unwilling to treat everything as connected infrastructure from marketing to sales to operations. It's not for teams who refuse to use the CRM but still expect this level of visibility. And it's not for companies that believe that RFP volume alone is a growth strategy. And that's it for today. We do have a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. And in the meantime, I will go ahead and put my booking link in the chat too, so that if you'd like, we can get something scheduled and have a conversation. Then I'll also see if there are any questions.